Alongside the Olympian Stevie Morrison and former Emirates GBR athlete Hannah Diamond, I am Todd Harris. All right, Hannah, we'll jump right into it. What is the outlook for Team France coming to this event? Because this is a huge one for them, not only their own venue, but they need the points.
Yeah, they do. And obviously, coming off the back of a win in Sassnitz, they're going to be really happy with that. But the pressure's not off. They still need to climb up that leaderboard if they've got any chances of making the grand final. So a huge weekend for them, but they'll feel pretty happy that it's their home event in Saint-Tropez. What a beautiful venue for it.
Psychologically, Stevie, do you think that Quentin Delapierre and the crew have kind of got the monkey off the back now and they know they can win, or do you think they're still kind of battling with thinking too much about some things and rather than just go out and sailing?
I think they've known they can win for a while. I think they're probably quite aware that they can be a bit inconsistent. A lot of their inconsistency this year has not necessarily been their fault. They haven't been at a few events. They had an issue with a wing at Portsmouth, of course, and so they've been held back a bit. I think what they've done a really good job of in terms of where he's improved is the whole fleet has got a lot more regimented with their starting strategies. So everyone's got all this data. They're analysing everyone else, and I almost feel like the whole fleet's become a little bit sort of systematic.
Robotic?
Yeah, a bit robotic. And Quentin has just gone, right, if there's a robot around, I'm going full analog, and he is a little bit fast and loose in the pre-start, and he's making it work, which I think is maybe a bit more doable now that everyone else is so systematic, which I think, is something for them to consider. What he's also done is often the French, when they would be on the course, they would like space. And if they had space, they could sail what we call in sailing a fast mode. So they'd be sort of quite low, quite fast, ripping around the course. And if they had space, they can make it work. But when they're in a tight position, that normally means you lose the position if you're sailing like that. So I think they've worked a bit harder on being able to actually hold a high lane and sail in the congested areas. I think the standout reason for Australia and New Zealand being the top two boats in the fleet is how they overtake back through the fleet. And Quentin and the team have, I believe, improved that a lot. So when they're in the pack, it does feel like they'll move forward. Whereas last season, it felt like, if they get a bit of luck, they'll go forward, but they could easily go back, and whereas now they've got that ability to move up. So I think monkeys off the back. However, as Hannah said, they won in Germany. That was amazing. But who was in the final? Australia, Great Britain, and then fourth was New Zealand. So they didn't actually make many points back on the boats they need to in that chase for the grand final. And I think we had a meeting yesterday and we were talking numbers, your specialised subject, obviously, Todd, mathematics. And it was like 2.5 points per event they've got to claw back on Great Britain to have a hope of making the grand final. So, yes, great in Germany. Pressure's back on, though, Quentin home fans, but they've got to get points.
This is called Three Big Questions, the podcast, which I'm prone to do is add another question. So I'm going to make this question 1A. Stevie, so we talk about France now. You talk about Quentin Delapierre and how he can be a little bit rogue in the start box. He does love the big breeze. And with the Mistral coming in now, how do you think the French will fare on home waters with that big breeze?
Yeah, I think the French are brilliant in the big breeze. And, we're potentially going to have the new high-speed rudders on here. We'll see if that works out. I mean, he did lose in Germany his speed record in SailGP. So will he be chasing that, Hannah? Probably. But, yeah, I think they'll feel confident. They're sailing well and they're doing a good job. The problem they've got is at the moment, Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain and Spain aren't making a lot of mistakes either.
France and big wins, how do they do?
Yeah, I mean, definitely their preferred conditions. And I think we heard Quentin say after the last event that, previously they've been stuck a little bit in working out some of the detail and needed to look at that big picture again. Sort of as Stevie said, the starts have really changed and evolved the way the fleet's lining up. So it's really hard to try and match other people's style. And if, with all of the data that's available to the teams, there is so much information out there. But you've got to keep an essence of kind of your own identity within your team. Sometimes if you're trying to copy and pick up from other people, then it's really easy just to become kind of the same as them, but a couple of steps behind. So I think they must have been working really hard at kind of working out what their strengths are and how they make sure that they're putting them forwards and working on those areas of weakness while keeping the bigger picture, because the racing is so fast, especially in these high wind conditions, which they're kind of really happy and comfortable in, but you've got to be really able to adjust to the conditions, make decisions really, really quickly. And as soon as you start to try and become like the other teams, you kind of lose that flair a little bit. So hopefully we'll see this weekend, some of the teams pushing for that speed record again. It should be nice flat water with the windy conditions coming offshore, nice flat water. But again, no room for error, especially for the French with the points they've got to catch up.
Question number 2 then. What will be the incidents that we saw in Sassnitz? How much of a lingering effect do you think they'll have on France and on Brazil? And there's a couple other teams out there that have had incidents over the course of the last 3 events. How much do you think those hang on to them for this event?
I mean, we saw the French have that incident on Friday with their rudder, and they managed to turn it around and come out as event winners. So a really good job for them to turn it around. I think easier said than done. Don't kind of underestimate how hard it is, especially with Brazil. Like, that was a huge incident for them. The tech team has obviously done an incredible job with the tight timeline to get the boat back to the UK, get it all fixed, and then for it to be ready to be raced in Saint-Tropez is unbelievable. The effort from all of those guys is really amazing, but they're going to have to put those demons behind them, because in these kinds of boats, you cannot afford to be thinking about what's happened in the past. You have to be really present in the moment, and that is so much easier said than done.
We're going to have now the new high-speed, and light wind rudder elevators, which should give us better performance, but also better safety, because they when you start going really fast on the old foils, you get what's called cavitation, which effectively is air round the foils, and so that's why they get that juddering effect, the whole thing shaking, and it's just obviously if there's air around a foil, that's not good news for control. So there's a lot less control on Brazil. I mean, I agree with Hannah. I mean, that would have been the scary one. I think for me, that was quite scary. Now I know Brazil will be able to go away and look at it and say there's some things we could have done differently. There's more safety measures been put into the software on board the boats in terms of the load that can go in when new boards go down and the torsional effects that has on the whole platform. So everyone's seen things, learnt things, and we'll be able to feel, okay, there is a difference now that we can go on. But yeah, the first day when you get back out on that boat and it starts doing 100 kilometers an hour again, starts shaking a bit, you imagine there's going to be a few other things shaking.
Question number 3, as we look to this event this weekend in Saint-Tropez, it's a quick turnaround. It's back-to-back once again. We saw that in Los Angeles and San Francisco. This time it's going to be Saint-Tropez and Geneva, so not like great distance to travel. Do you think the approach changes knowing that there's back-to-back events for the teams?
I don't think it can, because each race is weighted equally, so you've got to go and attack each one of those races as though that's the most important thing in that moment, because all those points are carried forward in exactly the same way. But I think it is easy, and we did see it in LA and San Francisco. The teams that did well at the first of those 2 back-to-back events then generally kind of carried on and had a better event for the second event in San Francisco. So while the 2 venues are pretty different in terms of what we can expect with conditions, I think that it's really important to have a good first event of these double headers, because that just makes the kind of transition to the new venue next weekend so much easier. Otherwise, it's not just the kind of technical debriefs that you're having, it's how do you keep that team morale up to the point where you can perform on the second weekend.
But Stevie, to Hannah's point, we're talking about heavy winds in Mistral in France this weekend, and then very calm winds as you experienced a couple weeks ago in Geneva. Does that change your approach? Do you go all in for this event and then roll the dice not knowing what you're going to get in Geneva?
I think the standard's too high to be playing your cards close. I think the boats where I think there's a really interesting question is Australia and the black foils, so Bond's Flying Rouge, the black foils, they got a little jump, perhaps they're already thinking, I don't think they're maybe quite arrogant enough to be thinking, okay, we're in the final, but I think they're probably thinking, okay, it's ours to throw away here. I think it's more of an interesting question for them. Do they play it a bit conservative and then suddenly find themselves in the fight, or do they go all out? Of course, there's still got good old chief umpire Craig with his penalty points. If there are incidents, we've seen that you can rack up penalty points pretty quickly. So you've got to be sort of juggling that game a bit. I think for Emirates, Great Britain, for the Spanish, they're probably a bit too much of a fight to be able to back off a bit. And then France and Canada, well, it's all out attack. So I think for most of the teams, they've got to go full on. I think Australia and New Zealand, potentially an interesting thing to think about. But, there is prize money at all these events, so I don't doubt many of them will be backing off too much.
We got to remember, we're down to the final 4 events. We got Saint-Tropez, then we have Geneva, then it's off to Cadiz in Spain, and then the wrap-up in late November, Abu Dhabi. So, best part of the 3 questions podcast is all about predictions, and for that, I turn to Hannah first. Ladies first, who do you like in this one? Give me your top 3.
Yeah, and it's getting tougher and tougher each event we do this, I think. So I'm going to put Spain putting a comeback this event, making the top 3. And then I think we can't, if there's going to be breeze, like tomorrow looks like we've got great breeze forecast, so we can't count out Bond's Flying Rouge and New Zealand.
Okay. Stevie?
It feels a little boring, doesn't it? I think the French will be in the final again.
Okay.
I think home turf, motivated, full of confidence, likes the breeze. I think the French, are going to be feeling it and fired up. So I'm going to put the French in the final. anyone could get it. I agree with Hannah that I think it'll be Australia and New Zealand will be the other two boats in the final. That feels very boring, so I'm sorry about that. However, she will, she will brag over me if she's right and I'm wrong. So I've got to make what I think is the right decision.
So who's going to win the whole thing?
Who's going to win the whole thing? I think the Bonds Flying Roos are going to do it this year.
It's so tough this far out, but I think we haven't seen the best of them in the last few events, but I think it's pretty hard to count them out in the grand
They're
final.
the fastest. At the moment, if you look at the stats, Australia are sailing around the course fastest. Tom's not doing as good a job as he was early season in the starts, but get to a 3-boat final, there's going to be space. They've got the boat speed, steadier breeze. That's why I feel at the moment they've just got a slight boat speed edge on the other people in the fleet, and boat speed makes you a tactical genius.
You talk about my expertise in mathematics. All I have to do is look at the numbers, Stevie. They won the first 3 seasons, and in season 4, they finished in second. So they've never finished out of the top 3, so I think the Bonds Flying Roos is the good call. We are getting you all ready. 3 big questions as we get set to go racing. Rockwell, France, Sail Grand Prix, Saint-Tropez, part of the Rolex SailGP Championship. For Stevie Morrison and Hannah Diamond, I'm Todd Harris. Enjoy the racing, and we'll see you afterwards.